Alright guys, welcome back to the video. So this is going to be the very last video of the year. I'm quite literally releasing it on December 31st, which means that there is no way I could release a video closer to the end of the year than this. What I want to do in this final video is just take a look back at some of the projects that I did this year, and as well as later in the video, we're going to talk about the goals for next year. So right now, at this point in time with the channel, we're sitting right around 5,000 subscribers. I still have there's another week in the month from when I'm actually recording this video to when it goes up, so we could be a little bit higher, but right now we're kind of right around that 5,000 mark, which is sweet. I will be completely honest with you guys, I was hoping this year that I would reach that 10,000 mark, but I kind of realized, midway through the summer that probably wasn't going to happen. So I'm still completely happy with the fact that we reached 5,000. That's still 5 times what I had at the beginning of the year. So it's really awesome to see that much channel growth over this whole year. So for this whole year, I've been focusing on trying to do this YouTube channel and, build this channel out to something that is much bigger. So between some of the bigger projects that I've gotten, between going to markets and that over the summer, and just kind of burning through my savings that I have, I've been really just trying to focus and put in the groundwork to build up this channel. And I think I've done a pretty good job. I've got a lot of videos out now that are actually doing really good, especially over this past week or so right before Christmas here. My channel has spiked up really awesomely. There's been a massive amount of growth to the point where I didn't think I was going to reach 5,000 by the end of the year, and within a week or so from when I was thinking that, my channel spiked, and we knocked out that milestone pretty quick. So seeing some of that growth is just really exciting. So trying to follow my dreams and build out this business, do content creation, all that, it was very challenging to keep up with it all year. So I think that just by finishing off the year, by looking back at some of the stuff I was able to achieve and some of the awesome things I was able to create, is just going to kind of be the uplifting mood I need to go into the new year now. So I've got my laptop in front of me because I genuinely cannot remember all the different projects and that I did throughout the year. There are so many little things that I managed to do, and as I was kind of planning out this video and thinking about what I wanted to talk about, I've been scrolling through and there's just so many projects that I kind of forgot about, or I don't remember actually doing that project, and it's super cool. So starting off at the beginning of the year, I think in January was when I got my lathe. So the lathe was a pretty exciting change to the shop. It's definitely one of the most different additions of all the tools that I've gotten to the how I should function in the shop, because it let me make round things. So one of the first projects of the year was making this small mallet. I still use this thing quite often. It's kind of handy. I think in that video I talked about how it was kind of like a little kid's toy mallet. It's actually a very handy thing to have around. I keep it on the bench, and when I'm doing something small, it's pretty useful. I also made some nice rolling pins. I still have them. They never actually sold all summer when I was at the markets, just because I don't think people really like that style of rolling pin anymore, but it was fun to practice with and learn to make it on the lathe. I also tried to make some bowls in that. I've actually gotten quite a bit better at doing that. I still don't think I have quite the right grind on my bowl gouge in order to actually really get into making bowls. I still need to buy a grinder at some point in time. But if you guys look back through my videos, you can actually see just how much work you can do on a lathe without buying like a benchtop grinder or something like that. But anyway, moving on to the projects here. The first furniture piece that I built this year was a little woven shaker style stool. So I turned all the spindles in that on the lathe, then wove the C with some cotton webbing. I still use that stool quite often. I've got it sitting in my office, and if I'm doing something where I'm not at my desk, or I need to be lower to the ground, that stool is super comfortable to sit on and work from. So overall, great project. Then I made a couple of platters. So we have the cake platter and a multi-tiered platter. I still have both of those. They make really nice display items. Then we get into the bedroom set. So the bedroom set was kind of a project that encompassed this whole year. I started building it, I believe, in February, and then I finally put out the condensed version of the whole project, so the kind of the one video that shows the whole thing. I think I put that out in October or November, I don't quite remember, but that project took me quite literally the whole year in order to make that final video, because there was just so much footage, so much stuff in the actual building of the bedroom set that was so complicated, so far out of my skill set, that it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done, and I'm super glad I got the opportunity to do it because it came out looking amazing. So I really don't have all that much to say about that project. I talked about it a lot during the series of building it. That was a very long series, so if you guys are interested, you can go back and watch that. But yeah, it was a fun one. While we were working on that, we had a whole bunch of projects kind of going in between it. The first one was a stool that I made with using the Lee Dovetail jig to make some box joints. That stool is one of the more useless things I've built this year. Not gonna lie about that. It just kind of sits in the corner of my office. I don't use it for anything. I think I have some stuff stored in the drawer, but other than that, I don't use it for very much. The next project was the Toolbox. Now this one, I'm actually kind of surprised at how well the whole video did, because it's not that exciting of a project, but overall it's a pretty nice piece. Now the one thing that I would change about that Toolbox, if I was ever gonna make it for someone else, I was gonna make it to sell, or I was gonna make it for a friend, something like that, is I would definitely go a lot lighter weight. If I remember correctly, I used 5/8 2/8 thick material around all of the outside. That's definitely overkill. That thing is super heavy. As soon as you start putting tools and that in it, it becomes so heavy to carry. The box itself is super heavy, let alone when you start packing tools and that in it, then it just gets ridiculous. But again, it was a super fun project. It looks great. It sits there nicely. It stores a bunch of my tools in my office. And if I do need to go do an install, it does make me look kind of classy. From there, we start moving into a lot of the chair making stuff. So it was right near the end of April, beginning of May, where I was really excited to get into making chairs. That was the thing that I was gonna do for the few months there, is I wanted to make all these different types of chairs. So the first one that I made was the shaker style studio stool. This was a very big stool. It was kind of, it's more so meant to like sit behind like a cashier's counter, something like that. But I built it so that I'd actually have something that would position me, nicely above the workbench here. Now it turned out that that stool was just way too big. It took up too much space to keep it out in the shop here. So again, that's just another thing that I have sitting in my office. It is actually, that stool itself is taller than my desk. So the big lesson from that project is that things out here seem a lot smaller than when you bring them inside. When I had it out here, it didn't seem like a massive piece of furniture, but as soon as I brought it inside, oh my goodness, that was a massive thing. From there, I had my first attempt at making a shaker style chair, which was a complete failure, but was a super good learning opportunity. And then right after that, I was able to actually make one of these shaker chairs. Now, I still use this chair all the time and sitting at the dining room table. It's a really comfortable chair. The only issue with it is that it has a very straight back. So this is one of those things that I want to figure out next year, is I want to find good access to green or air dried wood so that I can actually steam bend it. Because the problem is when you buy wood from the lumberyard, it's not easy to steam bend it because it's all kiln dried. Kiln dried wood does not steam bend very easily. So I really love that shaker style chair with the woven seat and the woven back, or even just the slats on the back. I love that style. It's super comfortable. That chair that I built is really comfortable to sit in, but it would be better if I could bend those back posts so that they kind of fit the arch of your back a little bit better. So then obviously the bedroom set was just kind of all over the place. That took up a massive amount of this year's, the time in that. And yeah, it's all over the place. But the next actual project was the shaker style woven bench. So this bench is awesome. I have it in my bedroom right now. So when I get dressed in the morning and I'm putting on my socks, I get to sit on that super comfortable bench to put my socks on. It's great. I also use it for a little bit of storage just to keep things off the floor, a little bit more organized. Other than my office desk, which I built last year, that bench is probably one of my most used pieces of furniture that I've actually built. So I do find that kind of funny, but yeah, it's a really good functional piece of furniture. The next project was the wine cabinet that I made for my sister for her anniversary. And that was, again, another really awesome project. It was fairly simple in its construction. It was a walnut case with hand-cut dovetails. It held 5 bottles of wine with a little drawer on the bottom. Super beautiful thing. I love it. My sister loves it. My brother-in-law loves it. All around, it was a huge hit. So yeah, that was definitely a very good, enjoyable project. So it was a pretty fun one to do. From there, we move on to the first king-size bed. So the first king-size bed was the walnut and white oak one, and this one was just so much fun to build. I cannot stress this enough. One of my favorite projects of the year, just the way that it came out, the way that it looked, the overall, the project was not very stressful. It had a decent amount of stress to it. I learned a lot about working with big pieces of wood, but it was a super fun one to do, and I am so glad I got the opportunity to do it. I really have nothing to say about that project that I didn't already say in that series. That one was just such a good learning opportunity, and especially those 2 massive pieces of walnut that I was able to use for the side rails. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. If you guys haven't watched that series or haven't watched the condensed version of that project, I highly recommend it. Super good one. Then, of course, after the first king-size bed I ever built, I built my second ever king-size bed out of hard maple this time. And although I don't have anything negative to say about that project, it was one of the most challenging projects I've done. It wasn't quite as challenging as the bedroom set at the beginning of the year just because of the number of components that went into that bedroom set, but just the sheer mass and scale of that maple king-size bed, that was crazy. Every part of it was so insanely heavy. It was a lot of work to actually get everything cleaned up. And then, of course, because it's maple, when you did get everything cleaned up, I'd get like a boot mark or something, I'd get a weird scuff on the maple, and I'd have to go back in and sand that clean. Overall, one of the most challenging projects I've ever done, and probably the reason why going forward, I will never really make furniture out of maple. I love maple as an accent wood. That nice light color makes a beautiful accent on a piece of furniture, but building an entire piece of furniture out of maple it's way too much of a challenge for me. You need really sharp tools, you need a lot of patience in your finishing, and overall, it's just not a style that I particularly like. That also brings me another good point that I learned this year, is that going forward, I really want to avoid client projects, or I really want to avoid the kind of client projects where I give a design and then I build that thing. I'd much rather build something cool and then try and sell it rather than trying to commit to a design and then try to build it. Because as you guys have seen in a lot of my projects, what I tend to do is I'll make a good design. I'll figure out what I want it to look like in SketchUp, whatever, and then I'll just go from there. And I'll get out into the shop and I'll just start working on it. But what I found is much more enjoyable with these projects is working with the wood that you have. So you get to make decisions based on the stuff that you have. You know, if you need to make changes to your plans, you have all those options in front of you. Whereas when you do a client project where somebody has already paid a deposit and is expecting the thing that they saw in the 3D model or the plans or whatever, when they're expecting that thing, you can't just make changes like crazy. You have to communicate with the customer, you have to make changes to billing, all that kind of stuff. It's much more challenging. Whereas when I can just make a piece of furniture in the best way that I know I can, I think that that is much better. So yeah, going forward, I'm gonna definitely kind of follow the model of I'm gonna make a thing, I'm gonna try and sell that thing, and we'll see if that works. Because definitely doing that custom work for individual clients is very, very challenging and not something that I particularly enjoy. So then moving into September, I was just kind of at a loss for what I wanted to do at that point. I had a whole bunch of different ideas, but I was just kind of trying to figure things out as I go. So the very first project of September was one of my absolute favorites of this whole year, which was restoring my Stanley Bailey number 7. Now, if you guys saw that video, you saw what kind of horrendous condition this thing was in when I bought it for 40 bucks at a flea market, and now it is in a fully functional state. I've used this on a whole bunch of my recent projects. I absolutely love this tool. Also, doing the restoration on this plane has kind of set me off on this crazy road of collecting antique tools. This was the first antique tool that I bought this year, and like I said, I bought that in September, and now I have a whole collection of antique tools that I'm gonna kind of be showing off going into the new year here. We've got a lot of work to do to restore some of these tools, and it's gonna be a ton of fun just seeing what I can do with them. But yeah, this is the one that started it all, and I love this tool so much. This is a tool that I will never be able to sell because it's gonna be in my shop forever. This was my first antique hand plane that I restored, and I absolutely love this thing. Then right after the hand plane, we moved on to making a walnut and hickory axe handle. That was a really boring project. It wasn't a bad one, it just wasn't a super exciting one. Anyway, moving right along, the next project after that was my first hand tool only project. Now at that stage, I really didn't have the right hand tools for doing a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do. That is gonna change coming into the new year here because, like I said before, my hand tool collection now has grown massively. I now have a whole bunch of really exciting and interesting tools that right at the beginning of the year here, we're going to be doing some hand tool only projects. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking for more of those because they are a lot of fun. It does make you think in a different way compared to using machinery. Now, I'm definitely not going to be moving to a model of only doing hand tool only projects. For me, I enjoy the occasional hand tool only project. I enjoy working with hand tools in a lot of ways, but the machinery just does stuff way faster, way more accurately, way better than I could ever do it with hand tools. So I'm gonna definitely use the machinery as often as I like, but every once in a while I'm gonna switch things up and do a little bit of hand tool only work or just a little bit of hand tool work in the projects just to have some fun with it. Then there's the white oak and walnut end grain chest. Pretty much every project I did this year was one of my favorite projects I've ever done, but this chessboard was one of those ones that's super simple, but it was all about the details, and I love that about that project. Now, there's a lot of details that I actually missed in it that I would go back and I would do differently, mainly that my squares on the actual board were not super even all the way around, but it was pretty good overall. I'm happy with it, but it's definitely a project that I might redo again in the future. But the one big question that I've gotten a lot about that project is what's gonna happen with the end grain in the middle? What's gonna happen when it expands? Is it gonna rip apart that frame that you put on it? And I can very safely say that I don't think that that's gonna happen. When I built that board, right at the end of the summer, I made sure that the end grain board fit kind of tightly into that walnut frame that we put around it. And now, after having it sitting in the house over the winter here, it has contracted slightly, so there's a small gap running around the outside edge, which means that next summer, when that middle section, that end grain section of that chessboard expands, it's just gonna fill that same gap that's there right now, and it'll constantly do that for the rest of its life. So it's got all the movement that it needs in there. I think it's gonna be just fine. If it does self-destruct itself next summer, I will make sure to let you guys know, but I think that it's going to be fine. Then my top recommended project for anyone that's getting into woodworking is the small dovetail blanket chest. So if you want a good small furniture project that is super satisfying to build, I cannot recommend one of these enough. It's not super complicated. It's literally just a box with a lid. Then you can fancy up the inside as little or as much as you want, all that kind of stuff. All around, making one of those small blanket chests is super easy to do. Now, obviously in that project, project, I used my router Dovetail jig. That definitely made things a bit easier, but I really wouldn't shy away from doing that with hand cut joinery or something like that, because I really don't think it would be that much more challenging. In that project specifically, I was trying to think of something that would be a good commercially viable product, you know, something that I could make quickly and sell for a decent price, all that kind of stuff. But it also would be a great project for someone that's just getting into woodworking to kind of learn the basics of building square things. Now through October and that here is where I was going absolutely nuts making shorts. I was putting out like 4 or 5 a day. I was just trying to absolutely destroy the YouTube algorithm by putting out these shorts, and for a little bit it did work. Now in the long term, I've actually found that shorts are have a very negative effect on the channel. So if you guys are looking to build out your YouTube channel, stuff like that, I would, you know, use shorts every once in a while, but don't go crazy with it. I would say like one every 2 to 3 days is good. Doing a daily short, I've just kind of seen it as it has a very negative impact, because this is just my experience with YouTube. But what I've seen is that your channel kind of gets an allotment of views, and those shorts kind of punch past that allotment that you kind of are given by YouTube. So it ends up taking views away from like your good full quality videos and gives them all to the shorts, which from shorts, you can get some subscribers, you can make a little bit of money when you actually get to that point where you can monetize. Overall, they do kind of work, but if you can really focus on making good quality long form content, that is actually going to be what sets you up. Right now, the only videos on my channel that actually are doing good, that are building my subscriber base, or, you know, getting views to my channel, are my good long form videos. My videos that are, you know, 30 to 40 minutes long. So that's just a little bit of extra YouTube advice thrown in there. If, you know, don't focus so much on shorts, you know, it's very enticing because you can theoretically grow your channel very quickly, but also having some of that good long form content is going to give your channel that kind of meat and potatoes that you want from a good channel. You want to be able to enjoy those good long videos that actually have some details to them. So coming back from that little aside, the next project that I started figuring out here was the knife making. Now I know that a lot of you guys are not fans of knife making, as I can very easily tell by looking at my analytics here. They didn't go over super well, and I get that. You know, I understand that a lot of you guys are woodworkers, you're not super interested in the knife making or metalworking content, and yeah, I totally understand it. I am going to be doing a little bit more knife making stuff coming up in the new year here. I've got some cool ideas in that I want to try out, but it's definitely something where I don't expect those videos to explode and do great on YouTube, because, well, I'm a woodworker doing knife making. They kind of contrast each other. But anyways, the next project that I did was a pretty fun one, was hand carving a paddle. So this was kind of a hand tool only project, you know, shaping the blade of that paddle using my low angle jack. Really fun thing to do. Again, if you've never tried carving a paddle, I highly recommend it. It's a super fun project to do, and it's pretty simple. This one was super easy. I just took a chunk of 6/4 cherry and just shaped a paddle out of it. Then we move into the entryway table. Now again, it's very easy to say that all the projects I did this year were some of my favorite. This one is another really good one, you know, really just an awesome project, because I was actually able to, on this project, just go with the flow. I was able to change up the plans, change up my design to just be whatever I wanted it to be at that point in time. So initially the project was overall going to be fairly simple. I just wanted something to test out that was tried and true stains on. But as we went through and built that project, you know, I ran into a few hiccups here and there. You know, I wasn't able to make a nice book match top like I wanted to originally. So I came up with this slat design. Then I incorporated that slat design everywhere else. Then I threw in walnut here and there. And overall, the final look of that project is just awesome. I have that entryway table sitting by the front door. It's a beautiful piece of furniture. It works great. You know, it's great for, you know, storing crap and kind of adding a little bit of extra organization there. So yeah, super good project. I love it. You know, I don't need to talk too much about it because you guys literally just saw me finish it recently. Also worth mentioning here are the screwdrivers. So I'm going to be getting back into that project pretty soon here. I got a little bit distracted over the past few weeks, kind of, you know, working with some of these old antique hand tools and that I've been dealing with. So I do want to get back into making those screwdrivers. It was a lot of fun making the 2 sets that I've already done. Then of course, the very last project of the year was the sled that I made for my nephew. Now this one was a big hit. I already gave that to my sister. It was, you know, she loved it. It was a really exciting thing to make, a really fun thing to make, and it looked super cool. And I mentioned in that series that that sled is most likely just going to sit on its shelf for the rest of its life. You know, it really is just kind of a decor item, but it was really fun during that project to kind of think about how it's actually going to be used outdoors and how the different things that you can do to the sled are actually going to make it hold up better in an outdoor environment. But anyway, that does it for the projects that I did this year. Now it's really fun, you know, going back through the list. It's bringing back all the memories of doing all these different projects, you know, super fun times working on each of these individual projects. Obviously, each one of them had their own stress points points, things that didn't work out, things that were super annoying or stressful or, almost ruined the project in general. But overall, it's really cool being able to look back at these. And even over the past few days here, I've gone back and I've actually watched a few of my own videos because I do find it interesting just seeing what I was doing at certain points in time in the last year here. And this is one of the reasons why I really love making these videos and making this content, because it's fun from even me to just go back and look at what I've done. But anyway, that does it for the projects portion, or like the past projects and that. Looking forward, going into the new year here, I have some massive ideas for the stuff that I want to do. Now, one of the biggest changes going into the new year here is that I'm not going to be able to do as much content or make as many videos as I've been making. Because of this last year where I've been working off of every spare dime that I have, burning through my savings, just trying to make the YouTube thing work, I've kind of put myself in a tedious position, let's call it that. So in the new year here, one of my first priorities is I'm going to go out and just find a decent job that's not going to take up too much of my time. Hopefully I can find something that will still allow me enough time and physical energy and all that to really focus on doing the YouTube stuff, because this is always going to be my priority over anything else I ever do. That is the goal for next year. I just need to find a job, or I need to build this up to the point where I'm actually making enough income to focus on it safely full time. But as for the woodworking projects, it's going to be really exciting because, like I said before, I'm really getting interested in this hand tool only stuff. I've got a whole big collection of hand tools that I'm getting really excited to use, and I'm excited to see what I can do just using my hands and some tools. But I also want to expand my abilities with the shop that I have. I've got all this big, beautiful machinery and the ability to make some awesome pieces of furniture. So we're really going to be focusing on a really wide range of stuff again. Everything from, small display cabinets up to giant pieces of furniture. Again, I don't want to spoil too much of the pieces of furniture that I have planned, but I've got some really cool ideas that I'm excited to share with you guys. And I've even got some stuff that is definitely going to push my own boundaries of what I know I can do. So those projects are coming down the pipeline. Again, the big thing here is that I just need to get the money in order to pay for the projects, because right now that's not really an option. Another thing that I kind of alluded to earlier in the video, but a big thing that I want to try and do in the upcoming year here is work with more local lumber. Now, earlier in the summer, I put out a video about these apple logs that I bought and I got them milled down. They've been sitting in the back corner of my shop for months now, and surprisingly enough, they're actually getting pretty close to being dry enough to work with. Because our ambient humidity here in Calgary, because we have such a dry climate, the moisture really does get sucked out nice and quickly. I'm probably going to leave them till about February, maybe until May, depending on just how much moisture content there still is in them. But we are getting very close to actually being able to work with that wood. And that kind of sparked a really exciting thing for me, is just kind of learning that there are actually some nice hardwoods here in Alberta. For the longest time, I really only thought that we had like birch, aspen, and pine, were really our only woods to work with. But lately I've been able to find, box elder, which is a really beautiful wood with its red streaking, some green ash. I put out a video just a couple weeks ago about milling up some green ash. That is an amazing wood. If I could find that wood from a sawmill, I would love it. I've also got some leads on some American elm, I believe it's called, which is another beautiful wood. I actually found out that white oak does grow in Alberta down and along the Red Deer River area in Drumheller. So in the springtime, I'm going to be going and doing a trip down there, just kind of seeing what I can find. We might find some wood, we might not. There's a lot of private property around there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to find or where I'm actually going to be able to go, but I'm definitely going to go take a look and see some of these oaks that naturally grow here in Alberta. And the other part of this is I'm going to try and work with more local sawmills. I've had very bad luck so far trying to buy wood from local sawmills. They're very confusing to deal with. They're not always very forthcoming with what they actually want to sell you. For me, I really want to know what I'm purchasing before I give anybody money or before I go out to a location, anything like that. So a lot of these sawmills are having a very hard time answering kind of the simple questions that I have of like, what's your board foot price? How do you price your wood? Anything like that. And they also have a very hard time understanding that, in some cases, I just want the raw wood. I don't want it kiln dried. I don't want anything special done to it. I just want the wood. I can let it air dry in my shop, stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to see what I can do and try to work with some of these local sawmills a little bit more to try and work with more locally sourced wood. Because a big part of woodworking, I think, is just kind of working with the materials that are around you. It's great to go to a lumber yard and pick up wood and all that. So obviously, if I want to continue working with walnut, because that is one of my favorite woods to work with, I'm going to have to buy that from the lumber yards. But it'd be really fun to be able to supplement a lot of the woods that I use rather than buying, lumber like that. I could actually go and buy just like live edge slabs from these sawmills that are just completely unprocessed wood. I bring them back to the shop. I either let them dry or I get them kiln dried, whatever works out best. And then I can actually work with some wood that actually grew from trees in my local area. That is a big thing that I want to focus on in the new year. And it's one of the things that I'm most excited to try and figure out. And then the final goal of next year is I want this channel to get bigger. So next year, I just want to get some decent growth. I would like to get the channel to a point where the amount of money I'm making from it and Patreon and AdSense and all the different revenue sources that I have because of this channel, I'd like to get them to the point where I'm actually focusing on this part-time so that I can actually reasonably put enough attention towards the YouTube channel, the content creation, the woodworking, all that kind of stuff, as well as whatever job I have to have, in order to help support the other half of it. But I'd like to get the YouTube channel to the point where I can actually safely focus on it part-time. Ideally, by the end of next year, we'll be at this full-time. We'll have to see how things go. Right now, the channel is still very small and kind of in its infancy, but there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. I can kind of see the potential of this channel to grow into something that is a full-time career for me, and I'm so excited for that point to come, because I've talked about this in a few videos this year that I've got massive plans for what I want to do. In the future, I'd love to start teaching. I'd love to actually have a physical location where you guys can stop by and visit me if you're in town, stuff like that. I want to be able to grow this into an actual functional business where there's more potential for me to support you guys and to kind of build a community around this channel. So those are long-term goals, but yeah, next year I'd just like to get this channel a little bit bigger. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you guys have any New Year's resolutions, anything like that, in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. And if you guys have any ideas or stuff you want to see pop up on the channel here, also feel free to let me know that in the comments down below. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.